But Mufti, it looks like you aged in this sort of period of COVID, man. Is it the stay at home or what?
Oh. Assalamu alaikum, folks. If this still does not stream and you can't hear us, then all I can say is you'll be damned. All right, so I don't know whether these chats are working. Let me uh, close that and start off the chats again. All right, they are all right. I've got the chats now. People, ahlan wa sahlan wa marhaban bikum. Salamullahi alaikum. Let's see. Let's have another attempt. Following our last miserable attempt to dialogue with the Imam himself. So I'm gonna have another go. If this doesn't work, there's the profile picture once again. Imam Mazhar Mahmood, people, the one and only. Allahu Akbar. Ahlan wa sahlan, Imam.
Shukran for having me on once again, Mufti.
Right,
Salam
you.
alaikum to the viewers.
Wa alaikum assalam. So I'm just going to this time just run a check, and if the people say, right, let's see, let's do a sound check. People, what do the judges say? Good to see you, they say. There, yeah.
Can you
We're
hear
trying
us?
to do a sound check, and they say, good to see you. Do you see the ummah we have to deal with, Imam Maz?
An
Right,
epic.
so ahlan wa sahlan. So Shaykhana, afwan for taking your time like that. Um, it's a pleasure to have you here, and I know we
Yeah,
were discussing away a bunch of things, but nobody could actually hear what we were saying.
yeah. Well, it happens in life. Sometimes when people actually hear you, they don't hear you.
Allahu Akbar. That's the baat nahi kahi gayi, baat nahi suni gayi. That's
Yeah.
the issue in life, that people didn't actually listen and they didn't actually speak when they were meant to speak. So, talk to us, Imam Saab. What is
Hear us
going
now. In terms of the audio, are you getting some feedback?
from you?
No, from
Oh, am
them,
I? Oh,
from the viewers. Can they hear us now?
oh, right. Oh, okay, okay. Yes, of course. Yes, they can hear you
Oh,
loud and clear, Imam Saab. So,
yeah.
shukran.
So globally, of course, we're seeing that whole Afghanistan thing, but locally, we're dealing with the Delta plus Delta virus in terms of the COVID. Um, Alhamdulillah, unlike many other masjids and Islamic centers, our masjid actually has a physicians board. So
A
they
physician's board.
yeah.
Wow.
So they actually made a very rational decision to still keep the public programs limited, right? Because at the end of the day, the health of the people matter. In fact, one of the doctors just yesterday was telling me they're seeing an effect of this Delta virus in children at a rampant level. It's crazy. People are in hospitals, and the hospitals are full at times, especially here in the Illinois area and many other areas. So now that sort of motivated them to advocate for the third booster shot. So hopefully that will be the final shot that people will be taking, as researchers say. But in terms of the whole, Islamic center activity scene, things are very limited, and alhamdulillah, it should be that way. Our safety matters,
Mhm.
the safety of people matter, and in fact these doctors are actually reaching out to universities and schools and telling them as well that keep that online app option going for people, because at the end of the day it's a health issue, and health matters are very important. They matter.
Of course. What
So
about your classes and your I know you do counseling with the community as well
Yeah,
and stuff like. Is that has that increased? Is that still the same? I mean, what have you seen?
has
In
increased during COVID.
Mhm.
I've dealt with so many divorces, believe it or not. At times,
Divorces?
divorces, yeah, and actually trying to reconcile and reaching out to mental health experts to sort of assist me in that regard. But you know, divorces are at a rise in our Muslim communities during this whole COVID situation.
Mm.
The only
I
thing
think
that I'm
I think do you
sorry,
feel that's just Muslim community, or because I've read that's everywhere, that's not regardless of faith.
probably is, but what I deal with is generally the Muslim community. But it probably is at a rise everywhere. Regardless
Mm.
of the backgrounds, and religions or whatever.
That's
The only
that's interesting because you see what it comes down to. One of the key issues is our, as human beings, our fundamental need for space.
Mhm.
And this
we're
thing,
social
say, say that
we're
again.
social beings. We need that sort of
Yeah,
uh,
but we
people inside.
need our actual physical space. And
Wallah.
people sometimes may underestimate the value of that. And you can see in things like COVID, where people are forced to stay within proximity of their own spouse, uh,
Hmm.
or people that they are near and dear to, how it frustrates them, and it frustrates everyone, I think, involved. And it's just I feel this is something which is so overlooked, especially within the Muslim communities, because Muslims often, I know in the UK, I don't know about the US, but they s- they they have these kind of like joint families where they
Yeah,
live together. So they'll have like brothers and their wives and everybody and the parents and this whole kind of joint occupancy.
yeah. It's not like that here whatsoever.
Yeah.
People want their own, especially in the small towns where sort of myself and Sheikh Saad and others are located, where there's like, even in terms of the spiritual, religious realm, there is, as I was mentioning to you, demand for even imams, right?
Mm.
So I would say that I'm the only person who studied at some level for 100 miles, although we're the
Wow.
only nation that uses the
Is this
miles.
because
But
you're live streaming from a desert? I'm only messing. Imam
uh,
Saab is, you know what? This is the states, they value the imamship. I have to say that is true. Um, it's also the Muslims there are a different kettle of fish, so to speak, altogether, or a different.
it's the next gen, right? They're
Yeah.
more educated. The millennials, they're getting into things like human rights and
Plus,
charity
I
and
think
all
it's important and can't be overlooked that the Muslims in America, I feel for the most part, are a kind of middle class. Up, I mean, they stem from at least the middle classes.
middle class up, I would say,
Yeah.
yeah.
Whereas in places like the UK, they were clearly the working class. They were not working. They were not. So the Muslims that came over from Pakistan, let's say, to here, were rural, working class people. They were not middle classes. So they were not people from the city folk that migrated and were educated. And so they brought with them their lifestyles and mentalities, and then
Mhm.
amplified them. So yeah. You know,
That's what I tell people. If it's such a blessing to live in this land where you sort of have the ability to understand faith without any bounds,
yeah.
right? So, in terms of even understanding the whole Islamic, religious aspect of Islam and learning the faith, you don't have anything keeping you bounded from understanding the true, genuine message of Islam.
Yeah.
Even if you're sort of involved in a certain sectarian background, you will always have that ability, that moment that comes in your life where you have that, that the light bulb just lights up and you have the ability to think outside the box, right? That
Wow.
moment will show up no matter what. because of certain situations that you'll go through in your life, may be, in reference to myself and others, colleagues, in terms of how their attitude is towards you. For other people, it's, you know, what they're hearing on right-wing media, for example. That'll sort of turn their light bulb on, and they'll begin exploring and understanding
Towards
faith,
Islam, you mean?
yeah, towards Islam or other, whatever, other faith, other religions, wherever a person comes from. At the end of the day, they'll have the ability to understand faith for what it actually is, what it actually represents. That, what, it's not a systemized thing, it's not institutionalized, rather it's a journey of one's own self, right? It's your own journey that you have to sort of take care of, and at the end of the at the end of the day, it'll take care of you. Now, sometimes, as I was telling you, in reference to people who are in the academic world or in the Imam world, that may happen through ilmi discussions or research,
Mm.
or in terms of further reading, or coming across people like Mufti Abu Layth. Um,
Do
and
you feel that, speaking of the ilmi world and academic discussions, do you feel r- r- the kind of the religious ilmi world is an academic one?
no, I don't think so.
Yeah, I mean, I've seldom. It's ironic because
It's not. It's not at all. And unless, once again, you're aligning yourself with like-minded people who have that, you know, intuition, which is next to nature, in terms of, wanting to study, wanting to
yeah,
explore the roots. You know,
mm,
if you're not aligning yourself with that crowd, and you're just sort of it, aligning yourself with crowds which say that it's either what so and so said, or
yeah,
it's either nothing else, right? It's
right.
either that or nothing else. Then you're
Because
not going then you're going to then, with all due respect to, once again, people who are naturally dealing with autism and whatnot, then you're just self-proclaiming to be autistic, right? You're just bringing autism upon
you see,
yourself.
because from one perspective, the religion is nested in a whole lot of learning
Okay.
because
uh,
to have an understanding of the faith, one must really spend years upon years invested in learning about the faith. So, studying things like theology to history to tafsir and principles and legal theory and grammar and rhetoric and creed and philosophy and all this stuff. So there is a hell of a lot of learning that takes place, but it doesn't really produce it doesn't produce academic kind of minds, which is both quite, it piques your interest, and it is disappointing as well at the same time. But it is quite it's that's
but
interesting. How can somebody read and read and read for 8 years, and then just to not go on to read?
well,
It's
honestly, it depends on the context, where you
mm,
are, what kind of an ideology your institute is promoting. You know,
yeah,
are you being taught, after literally given these sciences, are you being taught that you don't have the ability to utilize these sciences to
yeah,
access other material? Is it that, or is your sort of institute that you're studying at objective? Or, once again, like for many people like myself, it may happen later on in life, where you question certain things, that, why is this happening? Why this sort of a hierarchy in terms of holding on to a certain cultish idea? And then you just escape from that on your own, right? But if you're going
yeah,
to places which are sort of based on these academic foundations, so there are institutes like,
yeah,
Azhar and this and that, where there is a wide sort of uh, uh, diverse range
yeah,
of
yeah,
people,
yeah. No, of
right?
course. No, I mean, may Allah, make things easy as well, and enlighten people. I mean, what about the regular kind of folks,
Yeah.
regular folk that
So,
you are making contact with, especially stateside? I mean, I know you said there's a lot of family issues going on. Do they seem
yeah.
to take in What are some of the other what are the common issues that are being bounced up nowadays? I mean, obviously divorce is one, as you've highlighted, which is a
Yeah. So
unfortunate one.
something that we're dealing with in North America per se is losing faith, which is a big
Right.
thing at the end of the day. And at
Yeah.
times, I would say that we are the proponents of that. We are the people to blame, putting it bluntly, because
Mm,
of us giving priorities to just, our own cultish ideas and forgetting about what the next generation is dealing with, what the
mm,
youth, what that millennial is dealing with. Why are we not focusing on that? What kind of challenges they're facing at school in terms of, you know, various things. Today, we live in a very, convoluted world where new
mm,
challenges are coming about every single day. Why are we still just stuck on, stuck on old ideas and and just promoting those old ideas? One of my teachers used to say something very interesting. He used to say that the true faqih is
mhm.
the one who has the ability to apply the message of the Quran and the Sunnah according to their context. They're
Of
not still
course.
living in that well and emptying buckets.
Yeah.
That's
What do
a
you feel
for
are some of the uh
probably understand.
no,
There's
absolutely. I was going to say, what do you feel are some of the core reasons that place people's faith into jeopardy, in the light of atheism? What are some of these things that are making people struggle with their faith? What do you come across? What are some key
yeah.
variables?
So I would say once again for many people it's trying to find that balance because of either family or either their ulama or their mullahs trying to find that balance or trying to find that balance between what actually faith is in contrast to cultism or
Okay.
in
Sectarianism and
fundamentalism, sectarianism, or adat and taqalid,
yeah.
um, basic habits. How can we refine faith from these elements? That's one thing. Number two, when you tell a young mind of today that stop thinking, that's not going to work, right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made us people who naturally use our minds. That's why if you're not sort of
But
transparent with your flock, a time will
when
come
you
where
say stop thinking,
sorry, a time will come where they will deem you to be that liar. That, oh, you didn't give us the full picture in terms of a
okay,
certain
I
understanding or a
see.
certain opinion or whatever, you know?
Because I was going to say, when you say stop thinking, just to clarify, to qualify,
Yeah.
what does that mean? Because people will say, who says stop thinking? Nobody says stop
Well, they
thinking.
don't say it, but in terms of their attitude, that
Mm,
okay, well, our akabirin or our scholars or a certain segment of ulama have stated this. You can't think beyond that, right? This is what it's not more saying stop thinking. It's, well, this is the way of our akabirin. This is what our elders have stated, right? Um, in a similar manner, I was talking to Muhammad William. I call him my older brother. We were talking about the niqab yesterday.
okay.
The father won't
We've
necessarily,
had,
they may,
and for
but
the viewers, we've had Muhammad William on MindTrap in a previous episode, so do check that out.
in an average context, the father won't necessarily say to his daughter that wear the niqab, it's wajib. It's not wajib, but those who hold that understanding, right?
Mm,
In fact, one may argue that, is it even a part of the deen or not, right?
of
So,
course.
uh, in in that context, in a context where the father is telling the daughter that the niqab is wajib. She sees her sisters engaging in that practice of niqab, her mothers, her aunts, whatever. And then a time comes where, she puts that veil on her face whilst not having the mental ability to think anymore, that is there something beyond this, or is there something beyond this thing that my father is telling me? You get what I'm saying? That I don't have the ability to think anymore because it's been told to me my entire life that this thing is wajib, and there's no other sort of opinion besides this.
Not being told the diversity of Islam.
Yeah, they're
Yeah.
not being told about the diversity of Islam.
Hmm.
And I tell my congregants all the time, right, that no matter how bad you feel by me saying this to you, but if you are sort of engaging with a crowd of clergy
Hmm.
or scholars who are limiting your understanding of the deen by not telling you the full picture,
Hmm.
and you are sort of translating that to your children,
Yeah.
you're translating that to your family. Wallah, our youth are smart, man. A time will come where they will see that, you know what, may it be the clergy or may it be my parents, they were lying about this matter, that, a certain matter is more diverse than what
Yeah.
it's made out to be. And that will either take
So
them to once again, further studying, or it will make them hate the deen, right?
so
Put it
rigid
plain,
so
it'll make them hate the deen.
rigidity in
Yeah.
the deen is definitely a stumbling block towards atheism. It's definitely a stumbling block. I'm not saying it by necessity leads to atheism, but it's a stumbling block. Um, what other do you not feel that it's also the human connection, as in human interactions? Because a lot of people who I feel this is often a major trigger as well for people who abandon the faith. There is definitely the rational element that they have probed, for example, into certain questions. They have been knocked back, been shut down, told off, or not
Yeah.
found a suitable response. But I also find maybe even a greater element of how they've been treated.
But Mufti, that goes back to sort of what I'm saying.
Yeah,
At the end of the day, it goes back to that concept of limiting people's understandings.
yeah,
You're talking about people not having the ability to converse properly or express their emotions in terms of
yeah.
faith matters. But what does that go back to? It goes back to at times, I hate to say it, leadership at times. It goes back to that, or at times it goes back to a certain rigid or backwards understanding of the deen, or once again, a cultish understanding of the deen if you're talking about religion. So, for example, if a general youth, a young man or young woman is going through certain doubts and they're going to the clergy, right? And the clergy is telling them that, well, this is what you have to believe. You're not giving explanations, they're not giving any rational thinking points to them.
Mhm.
What is that doing to that person? It's deterring them away. That, what do you mean,
You know,
just believe?
what I say is, I mentioned this on my show, Meaning with MALM, that
Mhm.
there's a misconception that people have. It's a misunderstanding, and that is that you see, we as Muslims are to you know we are it's highly recommended to speak of the glory of, to 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 invite others to partake in the faith, let's say, to share what you have to share. It's highly encouraged that people always share. When you've got something good going on, there's a good business deal going on, I'm going to share it with my friends. There's something good, people want to share the faith, and that's a good thing. There's nothing wrong with that. That's, people want to, spread the love, they want to spread the joy. The issue is that when it comes to sharing the faith, we are only allowed to be, and this is the remit, the area for that. It's about the glory of God, and it's about how this faith may be so amazing for you. It's about how it may give you a deeper meaning. It's not about, you're never meant to be sharing the rulings. It's not about, because the rulings, most people are not qualified to teach the rulings. Secondly, the rulings of Islam are not to be preached. They can be advised if you're qualified. So it's like medical. You can't just go around preaching medical advice. You'd be in trouble. I mean, you could say to a friend that, oh, I don't know, my doctor told me this, That's all
Right?
I'm saying. And fine, but to say you need to do this when you don't have a license yourself is there's ramifications. Secondly, even if you are licensed, let's say you are a qualified teacher within Islam, it is only for teaching purposes. It is not for preaching. So when Imam Malik was asked that does one argue, هل يجادل عن السنة, does one argue over the sunnah and debate over it? So Imam Malik said, لا. He said, يخبر عنه ويترك. He said, at most, he can tell
Exactly.
what it is. I can inform you. Ask me, what is it? I say this. ويترك. I leave it on. I'm not even meant to debate over it. This was Imam Malik. So I feel that what happens is people, they maybe they haven't learnt or they haven't realized the glory of God, because that's what you're meant to be talking about. You're meant to be talking
Yeah.
about
The love of
this
Allah.
thing is so amazing for me. Why? Because it does this. It's made my life so positive. God has done all these wonderful things for me. But what happens is people end up talking about ahkam, that, oh, you need to be praying, you need to be growing a beard, you need to be covering your hair, you need to be doing this. The ahkam are a tiny part
Yeah.
first of all,
But
they're not even a part of
there
the da'wah
should
scene.
be
And
150 to
yes,
150 ahkam
so
in the Quran, not more
yes,
than that.
so that's the Muqatil ibn Sulaiman's enumeration of it. So he says, well, the verse of the Quran 6,200 plus, and he said,
Mhm.
well, 150 were ahkam, and Muqatil ibn Sulaiman, and some people took it up to 500. Let's say Fakhruddin al-Razi, Ghazali, you had Ibn Juzay and other people. They put it up to 5, but even 500 from
That's
6,200
minuscule.
verses
Yeah.
is a small amount. So the
Mm.
beauty and the amazing aspect of Islam is really the glory of God and how this deen adds value. And the
100%.
the the rulings are a personal thing. To me, I do this. You may ask me. I share my thoughts with you. That's it. And you may ask somebody else, and it's not something to get all kind of. You see, it's a personal aspect. Like, so, let's say I feel something is haram.
Mhm.
That's wonderful. Okay, let's say you feel something's haram. That's fine. You know,
Yeah.
you don't do it. If somebody said, I feel that music is haram, then don't listen to it. You don't need to worry about the other person. You need to
Agreed.
just yourself not listen to it. If you feel that, look, I feel watching TV is haram, then don't watch it. Because if you feel it's haram and you're still doing it, you're going to be struggling with this, with a burdensome and an insurmountable amount of guilt.
Yeah.
The other person in Islam, there is a wonderful, amazing diversity. Now, some people may not believe it's haram. They may say, well, I don't believe music's haram because these scholars have said it's not haram. And so, fine, that person listens to it. It's not, we're not here to police other people. We're just here to police ourselves. So, I think something is obligatory, I do it. I think something
And
is forbidden, I don't do it.
yeah.
And what
I
I
think
take to others is the glory of God. I take the majesty, the amazing how this deen adds positivity to my life, the wonderful character of the Prophet. I take this. I don't take rules. And I think this thing that I'm saying has somewhere it's been kind of it's been
died out.
lost along the lines.
Yeah. It sort of died. It has sort of died out. Even when you look at fiqh references, Jumu'ah, the center point of the week where Muslims meet, it's a social thing. We're advised to speak about dhikrullah. It's not ahkam which are sort of talked about in the khutbah, right?
Yeah,
Very, very rarely did the Messenger Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam display such, like discussing ahkam in uh, the khutbah. Today the average khutbah, if it's not about current day affairs, it's going to be about ahkam.
yeah.
And you'll see the fact that people, when they cancel others, what is it based off of? It's based off of ahkam, which is a subjective issue. It's not, as you mentioned, to be generalized and generally preached.
Somebody asked, uh, only Christians talk about the glory of God. That's I'm disappointed to hear that. And they said that we as Muslims should know how to conduct ourselves. Well, first of all, I think that's a comment that should be kind of addressed. So anybody who says that only Christians talk about the glory of God has never read the Quran. Allah speaks about His majesty and glory right throughout
But
the Quran.
I,
وَمَا
I,
قَدَرُ
I-
اللَّهَ
I'm
حَقَّ
looking at
قَدْرِهِ.
that comment in another way, Mufti.
Okay.
What, in terms of practice, in terms of preaching.
Yeah. And the other thing I was going to say, just going to the second part of the comment, that we as Muslims should concern with how we conduct ourselves. Absolutely. Nobody is to downplay the message of Islam when it comes to conduct. But what we're saying is that that is a private message, you see. And Islam has a beautiful diversity to it. So when I learn something, that how do I pray? In Islam, we have at least four documented madhabs, which all absolutely disagree on halal and haram. Absolutely. In almost everything, they disagree. Almost everything. One can even argue that scholars, and beyond the four madhabs, uh, sc- uh, we have ulama whose opinions are documented. Some madhabs may not be entirely documented, but still the rulings are documented.
Yep.
Scholars have almost disagreed on everything. It doesn't mean we're here to say who's right, who's wrong. We follow whatever we follow. So I may say, I follow this. This is my private space. It's my private practice.
Yeah.
I believe something to be obligatory, I do it. I believe something to be sunnah, I do it. I believe something to be haram, I refrain from it. What I don't do is preach this aspect. You can teach, there's a difference, not preach. You can teach this if you're trained.
Yeah.
Just like medicine, you can teach it if you're trained. You can't preach it. Okay, there's a big difference. So just to clarify what people, so when the Prophet sent people to speak about Islam, he always said, just call them only to Allah. Only to Allah. And if they accept Allah, then tell them I'm a messenger. Only if they accept that, then you can teach them. And this was the Prophet telling them that, okay, you can teach them that there are 5 salahs that they pray. Now, nowadays, what goes on here, the open da'wah scene, the problem is trying to preach ahkam. You see, whose madhab are you going to preach? Whose
Mm.
fatwas are you going to preach? The other person, what makes you think they are Hanafi? What makes you think they are according to that goal? Or are they Shafi'i? Or are they Hanbali? Or are they Maliki? What makes you think one madhab is more right than the other? Like, let's take food as an example. According to the Maliki madhab, almost every single thing apart from pig is not haram. Every
Mhm.
single thing is not haram. Whether eagles, crows, elephants, kangaroos, wolves, tigers, lions, nothing is haram apart from, and this is Imam Malik's madhab, and this is the mashhur in Mukhtasar Khalil. So they may say it's discouraged, it's not haram, but and you'll have the Hanafis where all these things will be haram, and you'll have the Shafi'is which will say, well, in between. And so the question is, it's not about who's right, who's wrong. People have their practices. We respect. This is not about preaching. It's about just teaching if you're qualified.
Mhm.
If somebody asks you, you can say, "Look, this is what my teacher said to me. I don't know," and you leave
Yep.
it to that.
Uh, you know, as much as I sort of disagree with the whole Shafi'i approach of viewing hadith, but I love something that Imam Shafi'i, rahimahullah, says, and using it to substantiate what you said. He basically says that um, ijma' is not to be generally quoted. He says ijma' are only regarding. This is in the Risala, by the way. He says that ijma' is in reference to indisputed matters, like for example the 4 rak'ahs of Salatul Asr, or the khamr from dates being haram. This is where ijma' is quoted. And then he actually, look at the integrity of genuine scholarship. This is what I love, transparency. He says that I have issues with Ahlul Medina. I have issues with the people of Medina. But if I see that they hold an opinion which is contradictory to my opinion, then wallahi, I won't quote ijma'.
Mhm.
I say, props, Imam
Yeah.
al-Shafi'i. This is,
Just
amazing, man. this. That's
Absolutely, and Imam Shafi'i actually has an amazing statement, and it's also this statement's from his actually Kitab al where he
Yeah,
says that we are not allowed to discredit someone based on their fiqhi differences. So
correct.
he says, what if somebody considers mut'ah halal? He actually quotes mut'ah. And he says, what if somebody considers, for example, music or something halal? And he actually quotes these examples because the scholars in his time did disagree on this stuff. Now, so he says, well, we disagree with them, but we can't. He said that we're not allowed to say that person is a fasiq or that. But even if I believe that thing is haram, because for me to do it, he says it would be fisq, but I can't call him a fasiq because according to whatever the interpretation is on, even though I disagree with it,
It's halal.
they feel it's permissible. So this was a kind of beautiful statement about tolerance. Speaking about religious teachings, especially when it comes to ahkam, we've got right now the Taliban come into
Yeah.
power in Afghanistan.
Hmm.
I mean, I suppose everything's a bit up in the air. People are really confused because this is an interpretation of Islam, which is Hanafi, but also it's not like Turkish Hanafi,
No. Or
which is
Syrian
Hanafi,
Hanafi.
or Syrian Hanafi, which is Hanafi, and the resting place of the last major Hanafis in the world was the
Agreed.
Ottomans and people like
Yeah.
Ibn Abidin and those people. But you see, it is an Afghani Hanafi fiqh, which is very culturally, um, it has a strong cultural veneer to it. So, and people who don't practice according to that way,
Mhm.
um, I don't know. I mean, because they've only just got power now, so we don't know what's going
Yeah,
to
but
happen.
you see all these news interviews coming up where the CNN correspondent asks the Maulana Sab from Taliban that you're all of a sudden you guys are sort of promoting women's education and whatnot, but so how is that going to be? So he said it's going to be based on Islamic principles, whatever they hold to be Islamic principles. So she said, what does that mean?
Yeah.
So he said that the woman will basically have to wear a hijab. So the CNN correspondent, she's actually wearing a headscarf, and she
Okay.
says, "You mean like my hijab?" So he says, "No, they have to wear the niqab." So then the CNN correspondent asks that, "Well, isn't niqab not even an Islamic thing?" So basically, the Maulana Sab responds by saying that, "No, it is an Islamic thing." So basically,
I thought,
they're
wait a minute. I heard from someone, the Taliban said that we're not going to enforce them to wear the niqab. They just have to
I
wear the
shared a
hijab.
clip with you where one of the spokespersons, or
Mm,
maybe it's just one of the scholars on the streets, but no, he said no, they will have to wear the niqab, right?
Okay, because I'd heard from that they announced, but then I don't think
How
they're organized. To be honest, I don't think I think it's kind of like
that's
a
the
fluke.
yeah. Maybe that's the issue, but Allahu alam, there's only Allah knows what's going about on the grounds, because you're seeing so many conflicting images and videos coming from that region, and if you're not on the ground, you genuinely don't know what's happening, right? um in terms of this situation, if this is true, then that only tells you that, yeah, we will sort of accommodate for women's rights, but based on our understanding, right? If
Yeah,
this is true,
I
this
mean,
is true.
the whole Taliban thing.
Sorry, Mufti,
I
let me just go pull something out of the oven because
sure,
I'm
sure,
expecting some people for.
sure. You go for it, man. You go for it. So people, uh, till look at that amazing view. That looks like that view is just right here in my room. Almost, it looks like the way the camera is putting it. All right, that's Imam Maz showing us that unlike you plebs, I've got a lake view. I've got a lakeside view. How do you, proletariat, working class, plebs, peasants, feel? I'm just messing. So, what are what are your thoughts, people? What's going on? Whoa! Supposed to bring that one moment. All right, there it is. I'm just waiting for. I'll bring up your comments whilst I wait for. Um.
So yeah, it's still too early to say what's going to be the scene in
Oh,
Afghanistan.
right, you're back. I was just telling people that I said. I said that's Imam Maz showing us that unlike you plebs and peasants, I have a lakeside view.
Uh,
No, I'm joking. So, no, it's, with the Taliban thing, coming back to that, I feel in some ways, like, I think that this really should have just happened from the beginning. That they should never have been, they should never have been a military invasion. And because they just don't work and they make things worse. Secondly, the
um,
issue is that let them, look, since you can't take it from them and you can't put somebody else in place despite billions of dollars being invested, and you can't seem to educate a nation within 20 years for some reason, and you can't seem to develop an infrastructure for some reason despite billions and billions, then let them rule it. Because the way I'm thinking is that, you see, ruling a country is incredibly difficult. That ruling anything, I mean, just forget a country. I gave the example of try and set up an institute, try and just run a household, and then you just keep building. To run a group, a network, a neighborhood organization, a company, a corporation, a conglomerate. Imagine getting at a level where you're running a country. It's not a joke. Dealing with ministries, international relations, resources, global economics. You see, this has come, I feel, like totally unexpected to the Taliban. And right now, the discussion can be that, oh, are women going to dress like this, or are they going to dress like that? Or shall we sit in bumper cars, or shall we kind of do this kind of like little jig with our guns and dance around, or sit in the gym, and all these photos going around, or eat ice cream? But the responsibility will dawn down so heavily on them that they'll realize, damn, this is actually how does one run a country? Because you can't run a country without the world. We are a global village, and you need a global society if you, especially if you want to flourish. I'm not saying they're going to die without global networking, but you can't flourish, you can't prosper. So,
yeah. And then people are saying that individuals are being displaced, and charities are sort of picking up on that. But
yeah,
it took 20 years, to be honest, for people to become displaced. It was not just in a matter of a day or a week, as sort of people make it out to be. But only time will tell. Wallahu a'lam. Only
yeah,
time will tell. It's too soon to sort of
yeah.
make a plan
I feel
in
that
this regard.
it's a shame because so many people have played dirty politics with and proxy
Yeah.
wars using Afghanistan and the Afghani people. Beginning with the Russians, the CIA. You've got everybody's just
Joe,
been involved.
Joe put it
Pakistan,
best.
General Zia.
Joe put it best. Joe Biden, he put it best. He said that Afghanistan is a graveyard of empires. He
That's
said
actually
that.
that's a quote. That is
He
that's a
actually he
quote. Yeah,
actually said that in his like first speech about or second speech um,
yeah.
about Afghanistan news press. Yeah, press
And the
conference.
question is, it's left because one of the British headlines was that, so what did they all die for?
Yeah,
And this is a genuine question, and it's a shame. I feel honestly for these people. You see, they are not. There's many people who just out of concern and out of good ethics, they feel that, look, there should be some intervention and people should save these vulnerable people. And soldiers are just toyed with by politicians. they are just unfortunately just on these kind of, how you have in the olden days the puppet masters. You have these politicians, these people who just sit, you know, greasing off these contracts,
Yeah.
and they just send soldiers who just get killed and themselves kill, and it's you see, it's not even there's the element that they get killed. There's the element that when you send someone to a place like that,
Mm.
they then commit atrocities, which, and there's something Dr. Zimbardo in psychology has this, and he has a book on it called the Lucifer effect. And he did, I don't know if you remember the Stanford prison experiment,
Mm-hmm.
and it was done in the late 70s, and it's an amazing, like a landmark experiment. Well, basically, for the viewers that don't know it, you can watch it on YouTube. Dr. Zimbardo, what he did was he set up this prison experiment, with fake prison, where he got graduates, and this is in the 70s, and graduates, so you can imagine, they're not like today, a dime a dozen. They were like the creme de la creme. And he got graduates to participate, and they were randomly allocated. You had prisoners, and then you had the guards, and it was a 14-day, or I think a 12 to 14-day project, where they had roles and they had to do certain things, and so the prisoners had to make sure, and if they, for example, do something wrong, you had to give them some kind of, you had to sanction them and do something. And so what he found was people in authority, they outright exploited that power, and they went incredibly nasty, and they really stooped to such levels that he had to shut down the entire project within something like 6 days. He had to shut this whole thing down within just 6 days. Now, you think about that. This is a controlled experiment with cameras and people watching it, and these were educated people who started to then torture. They started to torture their fellow companions and colleagues. So he had predicted incidents like the Abu Ghraib prison incident, and he's highlighted many of his works that when you send soldiers to a place, they will commit atrocities. It's the nature of the context that you give
Mm-hmm.
somebody in a position with power like that, with otherize, demonize, subhumanize the other, they will build on that, and they will really, take it to town. So so you have, all of this to deal with. You have the people that go there, they themselves die, they themselves kill others. You have people over there displaced, losing life, a country just going down, spiraling. And
In a single term, haraj, right?
yeah,
In a single term, to put it in a word, haraj, right?
yeah,
Uh,
wow, that's true. I mean, like
qat-
from the hadith literature, and they ask
yeah,
mal haraj ya
uh,
Rasulullah.
the qatil, the killer doesn't know why he's killing, and the one being killed doesn't know why he's being killed, right? At the end of the day.
Yeah. I see Saracen, shukran, much love for the super chat. He's just said Taliban 2.0 will be different than pre 9/11, as they cannot risk being isolationists. I think they will evolve into something similar to Saudi Arabia, religious theocracy plus modernity. Yeah, this is why I said that, in many ways, they should have just given it to them a long time ago, because it is one thing to fight for something, it is something else to live up to it.
Hmm.
Living up to something is always infinitely or exponentially more difficult than fighting for it. You see, because when you fight, all you have to do is resist. When you have to live up to something, the principles, and deal with it without having to fight, it's something else. And it really it defines who's real and who is. So yeah,
100%. Allah musta'an. You know,
absolutely.
I wrote something down the other day that um, it's often time. it's oftentimes the innocent are consumed in the clash of the elites,
Yeah.
right?
So
Honestly, there's no value for innocent blood today. Just people being
Allahu
killed left
musta'an.
and right.
Mm.
No sort of moral value to that. Wallahu a'lam. Just saddening.
Yes, sir. I mean, that said, I think we are equally in a day and you see, it's quite paradoxical because we are equally in a day and age which is also one of the most incredible times to be alive. You know, it's a paradox because it's on one hand we have things like this. On the other hand, we do also have. It is true that we are in a time where people collectively, the young, the old, the weak, men, women, all religions, minorities, animals, pets, the environment, collectively, there has never been a time where people or things have had more rights and celebrated as many freedoms as today, collectively. So there has been where some people may have had better privileges and freedoms than most people today, but collectively there's never been a time where people at large have managed to enjoy these kind of liberties or feel that, but my right, my freedom to this, or just even being able to, you know
See, my guests are coming in, man. I'm so sorry. This took forever to start, but
right. No, no, absolutely, absolutely. No, it's been our fault with the technical issues, right? But it's been absolutely amazing discussing
uh,
these thoughts. Do you need to sign off? Do you need to wrap it up?
let me just open the door and
Sure,
see
sure,
what's
sure.
happening.
Okay, sure. I mean, you go do that. Well, Imam Maz did tell me that there was um that's all right. Still spying on us right there. Look at that. So he did actually tell me that, look, I do have some guests, and as soon as they come I will have to wrap this up. So absolutely, that's fine. And to be honest, it's been, if I just, whilst he's gone there, I can bring up yep, we
Uh,
oh,
all right. So this is Brother Sadiq from my community.
oh, assalamu alaikum, Sadiq. How are you
This
doing?
is
All right. Ahlan wa
this is
sahlan.
one of our scholars, Mufti Abu Layth from England. Just doing a program.
Right.
Brother Sadiq just came to join me for breaking the fast. Alhamdulillah.
Allahu Akbar.
We're
What
gonna end
time
for
does the
for a
fast
bit,
open?
maybe we have 2 more minutes until
All
Maghrib.
right. So, people, that's been, it's been amazing and entertaining. I did want to bounce some thoughts on another time, inshallah, but just very briefly, that since we spoke of the Taliban, it's interesting that historically there's never really been. I think it's almost a modern notion, a desire for this kind of theocracy, so to speak,
Mhm,
that there's never really been a past like we've not had in general Muslim empires, from the Umayyads, Bani Umayyah, to Bani al-Abbas, the Abbasids, right through even the Ayyubids or the Mamluks, being the slaves, or the Andalusi, whether they were Bani Umayyah or the Murabitin or the Muwahhidin. I suppose one could argue the Muwahhidin trying to begin because he believed he may have been the Mahdi, but
mhm,
generally not them, followed by the Mariniin or the Ottomans. People have never, there's never been like a religious clergy that have kind of tried to rule. That's never really happened. I mean, there may have been tiny efforts like the Hanbalis who tried to lay siege to Baghdad, and that was just a disaster. And then that's why it was a disaster. And but generally, for the most part, the rulership has just been kings and politicians and sultans and people
maybe
who
the face, Mufti.
say
Maybe
that.
the face. Maybe the face of the kingdom was the king, but the Shaykh al-Islam generally, and even in the kingdoms, he played a huge role. The Mufti of the kingdom, sort of. And at times,
Yeah.
he, to be honest, in many instances, many historical references
But I
regarding
think
this,
I
he,
think when you say, you see, played a role,
yeah,
I'm not denying that they weren't important in society.
yeah,
So there's a
even in
difference.
terms of dictating the king at times,
No,
at times even dictating the king.
no. What example would you think of?
Yeah. I was just reading about Abu al-Hassan, Hassan bin Abu al-Ala. Wallah, it skips my mind. Anyways, basically he used to have
What
private
dynasty?
classes. Wallah, so
What?
I'm a bit rough on that.
But
I'm
is
just
it
rough on
like,
that.
is it the
Yeah,
Abbasids, the Umayyads? Are you
I believe
talking
it was the Abbasids
the
in
Abbasids?
the.
The Abbasids didn't look, even in the stronger era. Like, look when they were strong, Harun al-Rashid. Even look, Abu Ja'far kills Abu Hanifa. He doesn't, like, because he Harun. Look at Amin Ma'mun. Whips Imam Ahmad. They whip the things. They. What I'm not saying that, okay, these are horrible examples where they were being nasty, but even where they were being very nice to them. So let's say Abu Yusuf, as he's really nice with Harun al-Rashid, but
Well, it depended on the one who was ruling at that time. So,
yeah,
for example, it's known about Sultan Abdul Hamid al-Thani that he would take a very great interest to the words of the Shaykh al-Islam. Like it was
yeah.
at times the Shaykh al-Islam's words.
You see, so there's a so what I okay, that's a good point, because just to clarify, in case people misunderstood, what I'm not saying is that these people didn't have an interest themselves in religion and Islam. They would have. They were all Muslim, and some more devout than others. Some probably weren't as devout, and some were. But the issue, they were never clerics. The clerics and the clergy are a different class. So these people were always, I mean, they may have emerged from warlords, or they may have been, but they were generally kings or dynasts or sultans,
Yeah,
or
I
even
get what
if
you're
you're going to
saying.
say, look, Sultan Abdul Hamid II. But in his time, you okay, because he had the Young Turk movement, which he was trying to deal with, and the Young Turk movement was kind of taking other stances. But even well before that, one could argue that I think it was in the 1850s when they made the Tanzimat, they kind of decommissioned the Sultan from having absolute power, and they said now the Parliament would have power. So in his time, was he just nominal, or was he, how powerful was he? That, I mean, that's that,
Yeah,
we can
that's
look
a
at
whole
that.
discussion.
That's a
But
whole,
Mufti,
yeah.
I
But
sincerely
this has
apologize.
been,
I,
it's
I
been
have to
epic, man. I've dearly appreciate it. I don't want to hold you back. Much love, and shukran for taking the time out, Imam. It's been good
barakallahu
to
feek.
kickstart the Mind Trap again with your presence. Have a
Allah bless
blessed
you.
iftar, man. May Allah taqabbal Allahu minkum, ومن سائر المسلمين. آمين. آمين.
Shukran, shukran.
I'll leave you
Wassalamu
to
alaikum
it,
wa
guys.
rahmatullahi wa
Right,
barakatuh.
that's Imam
People,
Maz.
assalamu alaikum.
I'll be
It's been
signing off
epic
as
having this conversation with you guys. Hopefully, many, many more to come, and stay blessed, like always, inshallah.
Allahu
Assalamu
Akbar. Guys, that was Imam Maz signing off. Likewise, take very good care of yourselves wherever you are. Remember us in a kind dua. Wa khuda hafiz. Wassalamu alaikum. And if you haven't subscribed, subscribe, man. Subscribe. All right.